with an organization, and then going over there and posting it in that back wall. So we're going to do it first. My name is Adi Martinez Roman. I am from Arecibo, Puerto Rico, and I am the co-director of Right to Democracy with my colleague. And for me, a right to democracy is the right to have rights. So I'm going to go here.
My name is Neil Weir. I'm the co-director of Right to Democracy. I grew up in the U.S. territory of Guam, where my folks still live. And to me, a right to democracy is the right to have each of the decisions that affect you. And why don't we start over here with the democracy table? And we'll just go around. Go ahead.
No time to think. Hi, I'm Enrique. That's working in the aftermath of the hurricanes. And I wrote Sovereignty. I mean, I think it's similar concept that we're repeating in many different ways, many different words.
Thank you. Community lawyering, community empowerment in Puerto Rico. And both of us felt that even he was doing top-down work, I was doing bottom-up work, that we were facing the same wall. So when he called me to create this new organization, also because I discovered he's a very decent human being, I decided to join because I think we combine two very different areas of lawyering, which is the expert litigation, expert type of knowledge, and the community organizing, community client-centeredness that I bring to the table. And this is how we created Right to Democracy. To move here to live. Also with the vision that the people in the U.S. territories should have power and agency over the decisions that impact their lives. Definitely there should not be colonies at all. There should not be colonies in the U.S., our country that prides itself of its democracy. And that is our vision and mission. And we had to build it around very specific set of values, especially because these conversations in the territories and here in the United States are sometimes very difficult to have. And having these values always guide our discussions, and they will guide the discussion today between us. One of the values that is very important is that we always try to identify the common ground. This is part of what building a movement is all about. It's about identifying that common ground between 5 territories that are very different, but that share a colonial framework. But that usually these conversations are very passionate. So we need to respect our differences. It's another very important value. We have to recognize that there are very different opinions about what the future of each territory should be or what the best solutions will be. But there's still common ground that unites us. So another very important value is avoiding toxicity. So we stay focused to identify and work on this common ground and avoid toxicity in order to be able to provoke change where there has been stagnation for years and years and years. Neil, you want to talk about our
Challenge is that the United States itself doesn't recognize of solving a problem is admitting and reckoning that you actually have a problem to begin with. So our work and our goals really start with bringing about that reckoning. We do that in a few different ways, challenging the racist and undemocratic legal framework established by the Insular Cases, bringing together a coalition of different folks from the territories and in the United States, holding the United States to account for its own professed democratic and constitutional principles and international obligations. And I think this last goal today is really reflected in the room, really centering diversity as a strength. We all bring different perspectives to these issues, whether we're from the territories, from the states, whatever our backgrounds may be, and we believe that that's something powerful. We do participatory advocacy, litigation, lobbying, working with the communities that we represent. We focus on narrative and cultural change, changing the kind of insidious normalization of colonialism in the United States, where it's not even often looked at as something that's a problem to begin with, as I said. And finally, ecosystem building. There needs to be a real movement around these issues if we're to have progress. And so that's something we're very focused on doing more of as well.
And so how did we start this work? We started by listening. We did a listening tour across the territories to try to understand what colonialism means to them. And so, of course, we always started with what right to democracy means, and then went to colonialism. We talked about citizenship. We talked about what challenges they were facing in their relationship with the U.S., and even what strategies they thought would be the most effective strategies to solve these situations. And we were able to do 6 sessions in Puerto Rico. We did 3 sessions in Virgin Islands, 3 sessions in Guam, 3 sessions in Northern Mariana Islands, and then we were able to celebrate through our community director in American Samoa 2 sessions that she celebrated in American Samoa in respect to their idiosyncrasy in American Samoa. In all of them, we did a young people ones, because we really think that young people from 15 to 25 are a very important group to listen to and to get ideas from. And they were great conversations that we had. And one of the things I have to say that I always repeat is that, and you can see in the report, our major lessons, and also in this here whole activity, we can summarize it as Inafa Maolek. Inafa Maolek is a term of the Chamorro language that indicates the concept of making good, the importance of cooperation and reciprocity to create humanity. And we definitely felt that between us that day in the summit. There was a very important common ground that was identified as a reason that we had to coalesce together, and it was climate and environmental.
There are 5 areas that we focused on in terms of strategies for change. I'll just very quickly mention them, and you can look more at some of the things we pulled out from them later. We focused on litigation as a way to provoke change, and some strategies for doing that. Policy advocacy, working in all 3 branches of government, Congress, the White House, and then litigation with the judiciary branch. The importance of international law and indigenous rights, and Bruce is actually the co-chair of that working group on our coalition we'll talk more about later. Education and media, so many people just don't know much, if anything, about U.S. territories, part of what today's exercise is about. And then also organizing, bringing people together to register and vote, to engage their elected officials, to build community together, to have civic engagement. These are all strategies that we were able to focus on and talk about together. Another big theme that came out of the summit was, to do all of those things, of course, requires resources. And unfortunately, when it comes to U.S. territories, they've often been neglected or forgotten or even invisibilized by many in philanthropy. And so you have some statistics here. You see these jumps when it comes to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Those are around Hurricanes Irma and Maria, where before was very low, went up significantly, and then you've seen it's dipped back down as many in philanthropy have moved on to other issues. In the Pacific territories, it's even more grim. You see this in some years, less than $1 per person per capita in these territories from US-based philanthropy. And we're working with partners in the Pacific to build out more philanthropic infrastructure in those communities. We actually were recently able to get a grant to have folks gathering later this year, bringing community foundations from the United States and regionally with a focus on indigeneity. And so working to build up capacity in that space both locally and nationally.
And it was just amazing. We want to now go more in depth. You see you have in the middle, you have territories by the numbers. So those are, you can take them with you. Those are information on each of the territories.
I'm about to get it back.
Something I'm getting ready to say. That's right.
Right,
That's
so
right.
it's interesting because there's so much that teachers are trying for, and I'm saying, you don't know that you
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
home rule.
That's right.
American Samoa has the highest military recruitment of any state and territory of the U.S. I actually spoke to the military recruitment person there, and it's 300 young people every year.
Population.
Yeah, a population of 48,000, right? We were allowed to get a governor in different times. Territories don't pay U.S. federal taxes. We don't pay income tax, but we do pay Social Security tax and other type of taxes.
Over $5 billion of federal taxes
So
a
you
year.
pay federal taxes.
We pay
Over
Social
$5
Security.
billion of federal taxes.
Yeah. Territories have non-voting delegates in the U.S. Congress. Yes, we have non-voting delegates.
Cross out the second one then.
Well, you just put.
Well, I mean, we don't pay federal income tax.
Federal income.
Some people don't.
And I mean, of course, I do. when I come here to the U.S. and if I live here in the U.S., I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Federal employees in Puerto Rico have to pay the same federal income taxes.
And federal
So
employees.
Luis Lahar, one of the people we're representing, served in the military, moved back home, worked for the U.S. Postal Service, and also worked for the Social Security Administration. Had to pay the same federal taxes, income taxes as everybody else. Never has been able to vote despite being a veteran and a U.S. citizen.
Ain't paying tax.
And paying all the same taxes as everybody else.
Puerto Rico and Guam were Spanish possessions. Okay, so it's Puerto Rico and the Mariana Islands were Spanish colonies. When the U.S. intervened, they got Puerto Rico and they separated Guam from the Marianas, so they became Northern Mariana and Guam separate as a possession of the U.S. The U.S. Virgin Islands was Danish until 1917, but I have to say there was one glorious day when it was independent because of the slave uprising. I think it was more than one day, right, Miguel? That's why we need to in these presentations. La historia o trasfondo del territorio no incorporado. We share the incorporation doctrine, how you call it, curse. So we are non-incorporated, all of us are considered non-incorporated territories. And all are relics of colonialism, but have a vibrant history that predate colonialism. Definitely, all of us are survivors of more than 500 years of, 600 years already, of colonialism. And what do you want to know? Everything, thank you. History, culture, voting processes, what issues, problematics, problems, intersect, currents. Okay, good. Yes, so why don't you do first?
Sure.
Guam.
So we have here in the middle, you'll see these little handouts with information on each of the 5 territories. They'll answer some of the questions that you'd like to know on each of them, as well as a brief history of each of those communities. And I'll start just by talking a little bit about Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. I grew up in Guam. My folks still live there. The Mariana Islands, the history there goes all the way back thousands of years, the indigenous Chamorro people. And first contact was with Spain. Magellan actually was the first Spaniard to come. He was dying at the time, his boat showed up, people gave him water and food, and then he burned down their villages. So that's kind of the way colonialism often works. Now, today, Guam, as someone mentioned, there's a big military presence. It's one of the most strategic places in the United States. Because of that, it's also a focus of a lot of international hostility from China and North Korea. There's actually a bomb in China known as the Guam Killer. And there's been pictures of Kim Jong-un in the background, a bullseye with Guam in the middle of it. So that's how folks in Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands feel on a day-to-day basis of this looming threat. And is the United States there to keep them safe, or is it because the United States there that they don't feel safe? So those are some of the tensions that people feel in the community on a day-to-day basis there. The communities have a very strong indigenous community, the Chamorro people in the Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands, also the Carolinian indigenous people in the Northern Mariana Islands. So yeah, that's about, I'll stop there and let Addie talk a little bit about Puerto Rico and the VI.
Not the highest. The highest is American Samoa with 58% of its population under the poverty level. Also, Northern Mariana is like 38, so it's very high too. How much is Guam? Do you remember?
I think.
It's in the book, but it is around 20 something, I think.
20%. There we go.
See?
Pop quiz, Neil.
I teach law and politics, and it's something that I always look at when I see. Also, the historic line of the relationship with the U.S. is different. Puerto Rico, we were, like we said, acquired by the U.S., invaded in 1898, and the U.S. Virgin Islands was bought. It's not that they had not looked at U.S. Virgin Islands. They had looked at U.S. Virgin Islands, but couldn't make a deal in the late 1800s. And then finally they were able to make a deal with the Danish in 1917. I think like we share a lot of the issues and challenges, but I think the main thing that has like struck me is that we don't talk to each other as we should. There's a lot of Puerto Ricans living in Virgin Islands, and we don't know that, for example, we had a constitution in 1952, but the U.S. Virgin Islands doesn't have a constitution yet. And that they have tried repeatedly, like they tried last summer and they're trying again this next year to have a constitutional process, and they have been denied by Congress that opportunity. So those are things that always strike me a lot. And now we're gonna let Charlie talk about American Samoa a bit.
That was made between Great Britain, the United States, and Germany starting in 1889. At that point in time, the entire, this was one of the last areas of the world that hadn't been actually formally colonized. In Apia Harbor with gunboats to try to say who was going to own the place. A hurricane blew up, wrecked the German ship, wrecked the American ship. The British got out, so their gunboats were patrolling. So in 1889, they quickly made a treaty of Berlin, they call it the Treaty of Paris, in which they basically said, okay, we're going to try to make a sovereign government for all of the archipelago. Well, and we're going to make.
Why do they call it the Treaty of Paris?
I don't know, because that's probably where they
Or signed.
That's where they went. That's where they went to make this agreement. So anyway, what they did was they said, okay, we're going to go and we're going to make a treaty under, and since the British were there, they wanted to make this new sovereignty similar to Hawaii, and be under a king, like King Kamehameha, because that's how the British got control, a lot of influence in Hawaii. So they tried it, and they made my ancestor, you're going to be the king, because your family is going to be the chief that has the kingdom, and be the king, the sovereign for the islands. And the problem was my ancestors who had welcomed the missionaries, and the British wanted to have him that title to be the sovereign title. Being this blood quantum is going to, make you more inclined to protect the land rather than dealing with how Samoans really deal with things of just descent. As long as you connect in the past to an ancestor, you are part of the family. They don't come and look at your passport. They don't come and look at your blood quantum.
We're color.
Yeah, well, I'm a product of that. I always ask, our congresswoman has an idea that somehow it protects it. And I asked her, I said, well, you're a U.S. citizen. You're not total full-blooded Samoan. Is your culture custom hurt by that fact? No, and it isn't for me. And so but what does hurt my custom and culture is when my son, who is now 4, is not entitled to inherit. problem. And that is the issue they face now. Now this, again, that's a real product of the colonial system that is a real impact on real people and the dispossession of people. I've got 2 cases in which, the court has said, these are children who were raised in American Samoa. They have been dispossessed of their inheritance. I believe her. I'm sure there may be a Native American back there, but the Native Americans who were on that roll, on that roll of the census roll, are saying, oh no, we're not going to dilute ourselves any further, so only those descendants who are on the rolls would be considered Native Americans. But they don't do it by blood quantum, they're doing it by descent from, but the beginning roll was pretty well set. In American Samoa, that's different. Now again, we can go through the history of how Samoans love, the American Samoans love the Americans, because in 1918 when the flu epidemic hit,
areas that are typically served by philanthropy in the United States. That's why we divided you in tables. But in interest of time, we're going to do the participatory exercise, but towards here, so everybody can participate together. And I want you to start thinking about how do you see that the colonial situation, the colonialism that is faced by these territories relates to the different areas that you are interested in. And I'm going to do a first example, racial justice. Definitely the colonial framework that was created, that category of non-incorporated territory, was based and justified in our racial difference. And this was in the insular cases. So everything that Charlie was talking about and that we're talking about is a result of this colonial framework.
A lot of these territories, a lot of them have bomb testing and military bases without the consent of people. And that does lead to a bunch of problems with their health or not ownership of the land and many things.
Definitely. And militarization is connected with lack of democracy, with climate, also because an environment, because it damages the environment. Territories were acquired because they had some military interest in them, and all of them had bases. In Puerto Rico, we had these protests, big protests, and were able to kick out the army from Vieques Island, but still we have a high military presence in different places of the island, but they stopped doing the exercises, but they haven't cleaned the island yet, so there's still a high incidence of cancer and other illnesses. And in the U.S. Virgin Islands also, there is a high level of militarization, and people go into the military. But in the Pacific, in Guam and North Mariana Islands, it is something that is huge.
We launched this Building a Movement campaign because we need to change the narrative. We need to push philanthropy to realize that when they work with the territories, they're working with all these things at the same time. And that's something that we're struggling. Any words that you want to say about that before we go to the reception?
No, I want to say I'm thankful for folks.
There's a question.
Yeah, thankful for folks like Democracy Fund who are trying to work between these different intersections and across silos, and to get other foundations to recognize that too. So really appreciate everything you guys are doing in this space too.
Just out of curiosity, it's maybe a stupid question, but Guantanamo Bay, that's just like
Separate, yeah.
It's a separate.
There's some
place
related
to torture
issues,
people,
but it is,
it's not a
yeah,
territory.
not a territory.
Well, U.S. took possession also of Guantanamo Bay.
That we did participatorily yeah, and it was a framework to do.
I currently work for Congress here in Washington, D.C. So for me, I can relate a little bit with the U.S. territories and what they do get, what they should get, and what they don't get. And so for me, democracy is a right to freedom.
You considering people are not of this kind of this range of sections of age. So for me, right to democracy is freedom for a job.
Really? Thank you.
Hi everyone, Lynn Chen. I work at an organization called Democracy Fund, and we have the privilege and honor of supporting Right to Democracy and their great work. For me, a right to democracy is a right to shape the conditions of my life and my environment.
Assistant in the Office of Immigration Litigation. So this is definitely something I was interested in. And for me, I believe democracy is a right to freedom, health, choice, and more importantly, a voice.
Thank you.
Charles Lima, the lesser half of Mary here. I've been an attorney in Arkansas for the last 45 years, and while we live in Washington, I've been going back and forth 6 months out of the year to Arkansas in order to continue work. My interest in this democracy now, right to democracy, America needs to have an understanding of the diversity that exists throughout the country and the territories, able to integrate those diverse ways of living into a framework that is compatible with the United States Constitution. And it's the ability to say we're not a European-based, or even a British-based Commonwealth country. We are a country made of these diverse groups. We have basic principles that are enshrined in our Constitution, and we have all these different groups of people that we better get with, and that can contribute ideas to this framework of democracy that we have. And that, to me, is the most important thing: is to create diversity and an understanding of the diverse peoples and how they live, and then integrating those people with their diverse cultures and customs into that framework of democracy and the Constitution. So that's I guess I'm semi-retired now, so that's my
Sumaima, I'm a colleague of Winnie's at the Democracy Fund. I'm also here mostly for learning. I work on a program called Just Inclusive Society, and in that we're supporting a variety of power building efforts within different communities here in the U.S., primarily through the medium of organizing, and we also have a climate track looking at the intersection of democracy and climate migration as well. I grew up in Sweden, born and raised, North African heritage, moved here to the U.S. 4 years ago from London though, and I probably would rephrase this, but when I think about a right to democracy, I put down to not worry about basic necessities, even though I'm not happy with the trajectory Sweden is going in. It's definitely becoming much more neoliberal, privatizing a lot of things. That's something I hold very dear, this idea of like, we all collectively agree we should have basic things covered. And that's been a bit of a culture shock coming here, but don't take that negatively, guys.
But what I think is great about this is, first of all, this building is amazing. This beautiful building. I mean, it's huge. And the view.
I think that's really important that you brought that up. Healthcare, if you don't have good health, then what else do you have? So there you go, that's my thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Bruce.
Hello, Bruce Tyrone. I am a recent law graduate, hoping to join the Right to Democracy team. To me, Right to Democracy means the right to manifest our destiny, to vote over the laws and the decisions that govern us.
Good on you. I mean, I feel relatively privileged because even though we struggle, like, oh yeah.
Until like last year. He was doing track meets and like these masters competitions and like winning medals and he's
his son
like
told me that
personal-
he celebrated a recent birthday by participating in like
Probably, yeah, I think he did a 100-mile bike ride. Yeah, so he'll make all this. He always makes me feel.
Yes.
Yours is good. Yours. There's a group of folks that work, and I throw myself extra together.
Program, and then folks can get back to talking, having some drinks. Let's see. See if we can get the soundtrack. There we go. Although I'm kind of feeling the soundtrack. This is nice. Here we go. Thanks so much, Tony. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Our event here at Right to Democracy. I'm Neil Weir, co-director of Right to Democracy, along with my co-director Addie Martinez-Roman. So happy to have you here on what's been a nice day here in DC. Got the view of the White House, got great people, some great food, great law firm Skadden hosting us here today. I'll go ahead and let Addie say a few words.
Thank you. I also want to thank our host, Carl, for having us in his home. Thank you, Jalanis, for all the work that you do, and our lovely interns over there, and the photographer, Perry Backwell. Thank you so much for making this event, and Tony. Thank you so much for the logistics. So here we are in our first year. We're just 1 year old, guys. We just turned 1 year on April 24th, last month. And we have worked a whole year in building a movement. And we started this year, last year, doing a listening tour throughout the territories. And I was able to travel with Neil to the Virgin Islands, Guam, which is a 30-hour trek. And then hop to the Northern Mariana Islands, and then go back to Hawaii to take a 5-hour flight to American Samoa, which only happens twice a week. And it was just an amazing experience in which we were able to listen to the people in the territories about what colonialism means to them. As you know, English is not my first language. Okay. Colonialism means to them, what are the challenges they're facing in their relationship with the U.S., and even hear from them what strategies. Then we were able to do a summit on U.S. colonialism, thanks to our sponsors also, Democracy Fund, J.M. Kaplan Fund, and the Ford Foundation, and Covington and Burling also in New York City. And we were able to bring 45 people from the U.S. territories to talk about, does it make sense for us? Is it possible for 5 territories that are very different to come together in common ground and confront and dismantle the colonial framework? The answer was yes. And the answer was yes based on many things, but one of the things that kind of united everybody was, this is a life or death situation right now. It has always been. But right now, with climate change, it becomes even more urgent for the territories because we are all archipelagos, and as the sea, there is more disasters, sea level rise happening, and a lot of displacement of people from the territories that have to leave to make a better living somewhere else and get health services, etc. So we decided to work together and form a coalition. It's the coalition, I forgot the name, colonialist, here it is, Cross-Territorial Coalition, thank you. And this coalition has 5 committees, and we were able to now get a process to make this coalition grow. So if anybody's interested in participating, please reach out. It is a per invitation activity, and we need more, and this is the most important thing, we need more resources to be able to work this wonderful movement that we have been able to create. And we're only 3 people in Right to Democracy. So I mentioned all the voluntary people, but we're only like literally 3 full-time staff, Neil, me, and Jelani, Neil, Jelani, and I. And then we have a part-time communications and policy director who is amazing. We need to be able to grow as an organization, to be able to keep this momentum going that we have had. So I'm going to leave Neil to tell you, looking ahead, what we want to do.
We organized a letter that had 15 senators, 28 House members, including the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, and it got a reaction from folks at DOJ. We've been meeting with them, trying to find a path forward on these issues. At the same time, we were continuing forward, looking ahead to filing new cases in the months to come. An exciting new challenge focused on issues of democracy, self-governance, and self-determination in U.S. territories representing people in the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Guam. We have another series of cases we're developing focusing on whether Congress can deny citizenship to people born in U.S. territories. We'll be representing people across a range of different territories. So lots of exciting things happening and to come. But again, all of this requires support and resources. We're very thankful to have pro bono partners who have helped make a lot of this possible, but we do need to be able to grow. As you'll see floating around here, we have some QR codes and also some documents that talk about our founding donor campaign. We launched this last year. It's going to go through the end of this calendar year. Our goal is to raise $100,000. We're about $60,000 in. We have a few different levels that you'll see there. Founding donor.
I want to thank you all for attending. This work that Neil is working on with Democracy Now! And Eddie are working on now is really an extension of things that I've been working with Neil on for the last 12 years, just specific to the rights of citizenship in American Samoa. And I can tell you it was the support of various law firms here that got us at least to the doorstep in 2 cases of the Supreme Court to try to overrule the insular cases. Apparently, since they take 80 out of 10,000 applications, we just didn't make that top 80 in there. But there's always the future. I don't think Brown versus Board of Education would have happened without people knocking on that door for 50 years now. We're knocking on that door, and if it takes 50 years, that's what we'll keep knocking until somebody comes in and looks at it and says, yes, that's it, and we can overrule the insular cases. But the other issue is also education. For those who are interested, including a lot of the people from the territories who are up here that don't know about their history and their culture and how things happened and why things happened as they did, both here in America, here in the U.S., the diasporas from these territories has been, very significant, and there are now more, I think, more Samoans living in L.A. than live down in Samoa, and they create themselves as a group. I am sure that is true of the Puerto Ricans, Virgin Islanders, and others. So to be able to reach those people and have them understand their history, education is very important.
And that's what I'm trying to also push very strongly with this group. Thank you.
Adriel Cepeda-Derriex for Right to Democracy. In my day job, I also work for the ACLU, where I'm Deputy Director of our Voting Rights Project. And my day-to-day is spent dealing with what I like to call lowercase d disenfranchisement, but every now and then I'm so thankful to Neil and Adi for calling me to deal with the capital D disenfranchisement, which is what I call the situation that the American territories have been dealing with for so long. Adi and I were panelists together last week at a panel of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, where we spoke about voting rights and just general democracy or lack thereof in the U.S. territories. And something that's always been striking to me recently or in the last decade or so is kind of people taking it as a given that the insular cases are bad news, or that the insular cases are race-based and awful. The fact that there's a space even to push this boulder uphill is because people have made it an issue and made it their work to remind everyone, especially remind those in power, that this is something that is still being done in the United States name. So it's been wonderful to see Right to Democracy just add so much to that space in the last year, and the rooms that we've been able to be in and the spaces that Adi and Neil have been able to create in the past year have been wonderful to see. So it's just wonderful to be here with all of you, and I thank them immensely for the work they're doing. I'll leave it there, but very excited to see what's to come.
Is that we're recognizing Skadden as our first inaugural democracy champion for Right to Democracy. We've been working, I've been working with folks at Skadden going back more than 10 years. All the way back to 2013 is when I first started talking with Jeff Wyatt, who's now a partner here, about ways we can use litigation in the law to advance issues of democracy and self-determination. 4,500 pro bono hours supporting the extension and recognition of rights and territories. Let's give them a round of applause. It really is truly incredible. We just calculated the numbers leading up to this, and it's just phenomenal. With that, we wanted to recognize them with a special award tonight, and for that, I'll have Adi describe it a little bit more.
In Right to Democracy, also it represents a freedom symbol for slaves. So for us, it's a very significant symbol, and what better gesture to Skadden than to give them the Champion of Democracy Champion Award in a shell that they can keep and show to their fellows.
And you have to come up and look. It's actually engraved here on the shell itself. You'll see something special.
So without further ado,
So once you guys want to come forward,
we give the award to our first. Shows the symbol of a conch shell. And the reason we chose the conch shell is because it's a cultural symbol in all 5 territories. It is something that in our conversations we have discovered that the conch shell is used in very similar ways by the indigenous people of the territories. I don't know if you guys know, but in the conch shell, if you do a little hole here, you blow through it and it makes a sound. And that
I'm
sound...
not going to show that right now.
You have to have some dexterity, some.
You guys can try it later.
Yes. And the sound was done to call people together. So the symbolism of calling people together, especially when things are happening, you have to share information and to call the community for action is very symbolic.
Everybody, thank you. Parker Ryder Longmead. I'm a partner in the Supreme Court of Appellate Practice here. And we believe in what you guys are doing very strongly, very deeply. We support you, and I just want to thank you guys because, speaking as an attorney, you know, we work very hard. We work for lots of clients, but this is very meaningful work that we get to do, and you bring that opportunity to us. And we think that what you're doing is going to make a difference. You know, Justice Kennedy likes to say that the nature of injustice is that you don't see it in your own time. You don't see it in your own time. I think everyone in this room sees the injustice, sees the unequal treatment of people living in the territories, sees that we don't have democracy. But how do we make true on that statement? How do we follow through with that promise? You have to have people doing the work like the folks at Right to Democracy Project here. I think it really matters. So we get to be the kind of folks that work with them and use our skills in a way that brings us a lot of meaning as well. So we support what you're doing. We're hoping to see great things in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Democracy.
We're missing one. We're missing one. Yeah, I got you.
So again, really appreciative to get in here. We're looking forward to continue working with them in the future. We have this pending decision, so you'll hear from us when that comes out. And in the meantime, I think that's the end of the, yeah, that's it.
That's it. We're done with the program part, so please enjoy the food. Also, there is a special drink that I have to mention. Was made by Puerto Rico Distilleries. It's in Maryland, and they did for us La Perla, which is coconut rum with pineapple juice, very refreshing. And please just enjoy and remember to share, regar la voz. I just say that in English.
Spread the word.
Thank you. Spread the word to get more supporters for Right to Democracy. Thank you so much and enjoy.